first poem. It's called Fucking Damn It, I'm a Poet. I encourage your vision to sway from center stage to stage left, for I'm a little off balance. Society has told me, that I'm just placing myself in wrong. But I don't believe that life is a puzzle and I a tiny piece. I feel this is Jenga and it all constantly falls to my feet after someone pulls out a plank incorrectly. I'm always rebuilding and there's always tugging. My bones started growing in different directions because none of me is convinced that one way is better than the other. It's not about nonconformity. It's about finding contentment in my own living. It's about fighting the doctors on their definition of sanity when I've only been content in my own language, and that makes me an unnormal human, an experiment. But I refuse to let anybody else test my limits. It's the only gift life has given, and damn it, I'm gonna take it. Maybe it comes from having a psychoanalyst as a dad, but I don't trust fingers, they're just natural probes. Maybe it's because he was less of an analyst and more so psychotic. Maybe it's that I don't trust bodies and their extensions. They're all liars with hidden messages. Even my skin is chaotic. My tongue, a whip lashing emotions into you never thought existed, coating you all in thick, stale saliva, cradling you into jittering, questioning infants. I can see the panic in the whites of your eyes, how terrified you are at the upright position of my words as they exit, how uncomfortable we've become in the presence of the comfortably insane, how ill off-rooted confidence makes a stomach. Because I can tell you're off balance by the placement of my feet and my first stance when I speak, and I encourage your vision to sway, but I know it does not settle your uneasy intuition. But I have never found clear reason to change myself for God, let alone you disease-ridden empty skeletons. So I may falter, but I will not sway myself for you, but please, I encourage your vision to sway from center stage to stage left, because I'm a little off balance, and I hear for some, it's hard to stomach. I think Todd's the one struggling the most with this interview.
How have you grown as an artist between your first release and this?
Oh, wow. From my first release to this, I have grown significantly. I released a chapbook called I'm a Wanderer, Not a Runaway, and it is like the equivalent to like the Spill Canvas. I don't know if you guys know that band, but like, it's like really just like very emo, sad girl, like 13-year-old, like, oh, my boyfriend broke up with me and the world is ending. And it's funny to go back and read, because some of those, like, I still like, but to, like, read that and then look at the EP that I recorded, which definitely still had, like, that emo side to it, but just the writing kept better. And then, like, to my book, This Is Not For You, where there was actually, like, an actual story and, like, a plot. You know, and it was well thought out, to like this one was like altogether 2 years in the making, and a lot of thought, you know, put into it, and just like an actual like full-on book is kind of how I feel about it. So, and it's kind of crazy to look back and see the progression over like the past like 5 years, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing it progress like even more. I feel like there's always something to learn and a way to grow, so. I have scattered pieces of me all over this place, in hidden alleyways, under street lamps, parks, businesses, the parking garage, the bridge, under the rail trail, and multiple houses I can never really call home. A huge chunk of me is left in the basement of 666, another huge chunk of me left on an old punk's property. In 2 different bars I have left most of my memories. In a house across town, I have left my true meaning of friendship, hidden underneath 2 a.m. garage talks and music to cry to. I have also left small parts of me inside other people, the lost soldier and a fighter of a writer, the gorgeous superhero and the one I destroyed. I have worn myself thin over all the places and people and experiences in this sad excuse of a town that I have found such a love for. But I have left the last I had to give and the most precious gift this town has ever offered me, a beautiful, innocent soul, and I had to let this gift go because I did not deserve it. I have nothing left to give. You have taken everything. That's like 13-year-old extremely emo me. So that last poem is from my EP Suicidal Since Birth, which was actually produced in Wendy's basement at York before she moved out here to Pittsburgh. So if anybody is looking for someone to do some work,
I don't have the basement anymore.
it's okay. There's an attic and a really, really small room you can cram into if you want. No, she did an amazing job. It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, and that was called Suicidal Since Birth. And it's also the opening poem to my last book that I released called This Is Not For You. And it's currently out. My next project is reprinting that. And what that is about is basically toxic relationships when you're dealing with like mental illness and you're trying to get yourself out of that rut and the cycles that we go through. And there's like an underlining like love story woven through that. And this next poem has to do with the underlying love story. It's called Virtue Number 1. I'm not the exception to the rules. I'm the reason the rules were made. Baby, what made you think you're the difference? Yeah, you're a clever one, I'll admit. But clever has never surpassed my manipulative wits. You've got white lies in your corneas. I've got black-worded blades in the back of my throat. I have twisted and weaved my way into this life like it is an art form. You only have moments of connectable, melancholy melodies. And what will always separate us is the regret you've never learned to ignore. You can hear it in your sad, sore, lonely voice. I, however, use it like gas of fuel to create snippets of fabricated stories. Instead of sorrow, it fulfills my ego, and I lay awake at night with a smile the Joker would envy. Musicians will break your heart, but poets will destroy you. I put no distance between myself and my subjects when putting this book together. When I perform, I definitely put a lot of distance. I almost have to go into a completely different mindset when performing. But when writing or like putting a book together or like working on a project, it just all stays very personal to me, which I think is, for me, the best way to go about putting together a book, because it helps me keep in mind the timeline of everything, the relationships of everything, and that helps me complete and like tell the story in the way that I want. So there really wasn't much distance, and sometimes it definitely got hard. I've had to walk away from it. There was poems where I've been like, oh, I want this in the book, but I can't read this right now. Be careful where you stumble, where shards of glass become less of a weapon and more a tool to leave choppy stories. When night brings something worse than childhood fears, how graceful purity has become a lost art. Why is tragedy so much more intriguing to us? How God loses his own faith upon when we would never know. When lunch every day is stained with the constant avoidance of another's eyes, where the echoes of one's voice become shadows lurking through a subconscious. Why, we ask to no one, believe in something so childish. With the unknown comes demons even Lucifer couldn't face. When a heartbeat is harder to find is where a love has faded. Where magic exists is all up to perception. Why cartoons are easier to digest than black and white movies. With a thirst for constant escape, how do we know the right time to reach back to reality? Where tangled twine becomes reasons why a pair of feet never walk the same, why goosebumps become an addictive adrenaline rush, how the chase to some is more than just a game. When we fall to our knees, screaming for a sanctuary from ourselves, with scars that never heal, we crawl through the night. Why do we let days slowly melt into weeks, so when simple thoughts turn into fiction horror stories, how we lose ourselves to that monster under our bed, where truth no longer matters to our fixed brains on what life should be. With mangled bodies, we think we can carry on with confidence, waiting for a bus to the farthest place away from here. Who are we when we constantly run away from ourselves? I mean, I've been writing about all the situations in my life since I was 5 years old. I literally have like poems written from when I was like 7, like still saved. So it was just always kind of part of who I was. I didn't get more serious about it though until after I moved to Maryland and my relationship ended and I had to move back home, and I took writing way more seriously then, and it was a form of release and an outlet. And then finally I was like, hey, like I could actually do something out of this. And so I think it took a while for that, but it was always definitely just like kind of there, almost like part of my personality. And then I finally like tapped into that. I've been like many different personalities because I have borderline personality disorder, so I just decided to hone in on that one more as I got older. You said I was a shadow, remnants of the human you once believed in. I asked, when was the last time you looked in the mirror? For I, too, used to be a firm believer. I should be thankful, I know, for the many things you have shown me, like how the most brilliant can still have corrupt ignorance, how hate can be transferred through fingertips. You can strum your guitar, sing a pretty ballad about hearts aligning with planets, but at the end of the day, baby, an ocean is still just an ocean. We were only ever rocks, hard, angry rocks. Along the way you crumbled me, proceeded to inhale me until I was underneath your skin. I tore you apart cell by cell, nerve by nerve. Afterwards, you asked why it's always so dark. I replied with, but I thought gloomy days were your favorite. Eventually, we all become what we surround ourselves with. In that case, your first mistake was letting me in. Problem is, I soak in the mayhem more than trying to settle it. I can preach it, but I will never learn it. And to be honest, I like the idea of you way more than the feeling you gave in between my legs. I was always one fake orgasm away from keeping you there with cheap booze and the stale use of my body, because misery loves company. Somehow, I got lost in my own insanity, because then I allowed you to break me. Somewhere in the middle, vulnerability beat ego, and I fell in love. In the beginning, there really wasn't a relationship between the art and the book. I kind of put the book together, and then I was like, yo, I want some artwork in here. And the guy, Rainer, who did the cover for my last book, This Is Not For You, was who I went to, because the book was like so like dark and vulnerable, and his artwork, especially his digital stuff, always has like that kind of like dark undertone, like creepy side to it. And what I did was I was like, hey, would you be willing? Like, I'll pay you for like each thing you do. We'll just figure it out as we go. Like, I'll send you just like random ones. You make art from what you feel from that. We'll see how many, goes from there. And then we settled on the amount that's in the book, and I feel like it ended up working out really well, especially like with like the layout and the different, like, I feel like there's enough space, in between like each art picture, that it's not overwhelming and taking over the poetry. And yeah, like he really understood like the feel of everything, and it just worked out. So there really was no plan for it beforehand. It just kind of happened as I was putting the book together. I got antsy one day and took the signs down. I suppose you saw that as an easy in. Although I couldn't get you for loitering, technically, I still kept tabs on you as you wandered through my mind palace, getting your fingerprints all over old case files and spell books. Watched you get pissed off at all the doors your lock-picking kit wasn't good enough for. Saw you slowly get more and more irritated each day you woke up and the layout had rearranged overnight. You found my library boring and spent too much time in the movie room. After a while, I suppose I realized you were no real threat, just more so an annoyance whose skills became handy from time to time. Abuse isn't always a mark on the neck. Sometimes it's a word placed in your left ear that within an hour causes the right one to start bleeding. I guess that's why I spent last New Year's indoors puking, not from a hangover, but a concussion, and you spent it wondering what exact moment it was that caused the power outage that left you without memories. You were throwing thesauruses around my head, just for fun. I wasn't prepared for the damage vocabulary could bring upon a mental frame. You weren't prepared for the emotions I could dig up from your graves. Fuck. We are just too damn clever for our own good. Next time, don't bring sausage to a fist fight. Stopping to eat in the middle only caused the situation to allow both of us out alive, and we always promised each other in this that one would never make it. How anticlimactic that morning when I finally decided you were of no use to me, kicked you out, leaving you within the destruction of it all before you even came to. Not really sorry I didn't clean up after myself. I just didn't feel like going to the 3rd floor where you left the broom. It was definitely cathartic to put the book together. All of like the poems were written at such different points of my life, so it was more so, I mean, like, in writing each poem is cathartic in itself, but actually like sitting down and coming up with a game plan and like going through all of them and like deciding which ones to put into the book was like a whole different type of cathartic for me. I don't even know if that was grammatically correct. I swear I'm a writer. But yeah, I mean, like, it came to a point where the book kind of wrote itself, but it wasn't like I sat down and wrote each poem like in order. It was more so just like I had like all the poems there and I was like, okay, this is how it's gonna go. And I'm definitely in a way better spot mentally and like stability wise than I was when the majority of those poems were written. And it's kind of like closing a chapter of my life, like putting this book out. It's like saying goodbye to like that old like me that was like thinking that like getting drunk every other night was how you handle like issues, and like going to punk shows and like getting concussions so that like I didn't feel anything and like but it's funny because like going back and rereading it through like the editing process and everything, like some of them like feel different to me already, and I haven't even like put the book out. So I've definitely grown a lot, and I'm excited to put it out there and do the tour, but after like the tour I'm definitely going to be ready, you know, to be like, and that's that. Yeah. There's one poem that I really, really went back and forth about putting into the book. I believe it's called Degrade Me, and it was the only thing that I wrote. I went to a dual diagnosis rehab for a month, and the poem's written about me getting taken in, and that process was like, well, it was degrading, and it was just like mentally like exhausting, and like there was so much that was hitting me during that like hour, and it was the only thing that I actually wrote about that time period, 'cause I don't really like thinking about it, and like most people are like, well, that's like, you know, that's the stuff that you should write about, and it's like, well, the issues that brought me there and the issues that I faced like getting out, I definitely wrote about, but that time period was just such like a blur, and that poem is probably one of the most vulnerable like poems that I've ever written, and so I struggled. I went back and forth with that one, and finally I was like, you know what, that's what this book is about, though. Like I said, I do write a lot about mental illness and the struggles with like toxic relationships and dealing with suicide and stuff. But I swear, outside of my poetry, I'm actually like a happy person, and like I'm doing pretty good now. But I mentioned earlier that I ended up going to a rehab at one point for a month, and this is the only poem I ever wrote about that experience. And it's called You Should Be Ashamed. Degrade me. Yeah, that'll help. A warm welcome, take your pants off, drop your underwear, now the top, brawl to, stand there cold, humiliated. Is making me feel small part of the process? You could have at least not stared at my body in disgust as you felt up my empty clothes for hidden parts of my pain. Even they felt violated. The straight, just hard, driven apathy that clung to me as I redressed sunk into my pores. Yeah, better stick me in detox. I'll be sweating this out of my system for days. I can't say that there's any one particular piece that I'm looking the most forward to, but there's definitely one that I'm like the least excited about. Which is one that like, it was one of the first poems I ever wrote when I got into writing, and I've edited it so many times over the years, and I finally was just like, just getting put in this book, like it's done, and I'm only performing it like the release show, so it's like I'm gonna perform it once, and then like that's it. So that's the one that like I'm most nervous about. But as far as like one in particular that I'm like the most excited for, I can't really. I guess the biggest one for me would probably be the I swear this isn't a suicide note, but I'm also a liar, because I feel like it kind of has like a nice like still like kind of joking, kind of like picking at like the softer side that like our society has made towards like mental illness and stuff, because we're so open about talking about it now, but it also hits like the heavier sides, and that's kind of what I want to do with my poetry. And what this book is about is basically like, hey, like we can talk about this, and it's sometimes you have to make like kind of jokes about it to get through, but it's also a very serious like thing. And if I can get up, you know, and put like my personal stuff out there for it, then maybe that'll help other people feel more comfortable. Maybe not performing it out for other people, but you know, like just being able to talk about it more and stuff. So I guess in a way that is the one that I'm most excited about. So it's titled, I Swear This Isn't a Suicide Note, but I'm Also a Liar. I feel like I'm running towards something to hold on to because my life suddenly feels desperate, and my hands don't know what to do on their own anymore, and silenced air is stale and suffocating. So I need people and things to take up my space before the sand falls through and my memories are gone. But before I kill myself, I will give everyone I was supposed to love a gift, and everyone I love too much a scratch piece of paper with a Walt Disney quote on it, since I already wasted too many of my words onto their bodies. Before I kill myself, I will speak to a graveyard as if running for office. I will bring a podium made out of dry macaroni and Play-Doh and sticks and glitter. I will stand naked before the dark, bare feet on decaying forgotten essences, and I will preach on racing towards a red light. Before I kill myself, I will knock on metal and set fire to wood, because fuck the standards by which I was forced to abide by and believe in that made each passing day a reason to give up on colors. Before I kill myself, I will build a time machine, fast forward and rid all traces of my obituary, for none of you deserve an explanation. Before I kill myself, I will start a war against attic windows. I will take breeze blocks tied to my leather skin and thrust myself into each and every one as a lesson in minding your own business. Before I kill myself, I will remove my nails and scatter them like ashes across the desert. Before I kill myself, I will howl at spiders in a swamp and laugh at the moonlit shadows that dance around the young girl's bed, waiting for adolescence to make its jump down the rabbit hole. Before I kill myself, I will take Peter's hand and run with the boys who never made it back from that same hole. Before I kill myself, I will call upon God and lie straight to his face about faith and beliefs and how I messed it all up and deserve this hell. And once I kill myself, I will exit this realm, find a new one where the grass actually looks green still.
There we go.
So, art major.
Thanks.
Here, look at me.
This is a DIY intense. Is my holy moment in which your presence for was not needed, only allowed by a precious moment of desperate mental collapsing. You taught me that friendship doesn't look like an angel holding you out the window saying, "Don't worry, child, I've got you." I've bitten your bullet enough times to know how you like to be chewed. How they all eat you up. It's sickening to see what this has become. I'm sorry. My morals didn't allow for me to swallow you for dinner each night. I'm sorry. My teeth preferred to grind you out instead of my knees allowing themselves to get bruised and cut on the rocks in the soil your bare feet have poisoned. I'm sorry. You resent me for not bowing underneath your Crayola halo. I'm sorry. You resent me for not bowing underneath your Crayola halo. I'm sorry. You never learned the true meaning of sorrow your whole life. Only how to distribute it among others. I know where your hands end up each night, pressed together, pleading, not praying. I know your lips belong to all the girls who learned too late and ran. I know your heart belongs to your God. But where are your intestines, darling? When people read this, the way I want them to react is to cry. Okay. I kind of want it to make people feel a range of emotions. I mean, it kind of ends on a hopeful note, you know, but it's definitely like a roller coaster of a ride throughout the book. And I want them to feel a sense of connection and a sense of vulnerability when they're actually like reading it. If they don't connect to it or feel anything, I'm pretty sure they're probably a sociopath. So, which means my book's not for them anyway. It's called Belly Button. I apologize for stopping to clean you out, as if then an unwanted tongue would enter and instantly recoil, offended by the taste of crusty empowerment. That failed. I hated that you stood as an excuse for strange hands to tickle while in a bathing suit, a reason for eyes to wander where I did not want eyes to be. I found you sacred, a symbol for childlike moments, a reminder of the beginning of where I came from. But where I came from became the problem. Where I came from became reason to grow up too fast and learn to cleanse a sacred space in which was soiled against my will. Eventually, I just couldn't keep up with the mess. Eventually, everything got faded, pushed into a rusty safe within my subconscious. I'm sorry I let myself forget, only allowed the hate to stay. The intense impulse to punch anyone in the face whose hands came within your proximity, the feeling of wanting to vomit the second a finger got within you. How I started researching procedures on how to rid my body of you altogether, then started using you as a weapon, a thing under my control now, as a signal, as a way to lure others into me, into this skin, and I realized that my behaviors became twisted into a sense of self-punishment mixed with a, but this is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. So I showed you off like a trophy for years. I let you stand for everything I hated, then let everything I hated lay on top of me, tangled through dirty sheets, on kitchen floors, until they all crushed me out flat. Dear navel, the memories have started coming back, and it aches right where you still sit upon me. I keep getting told it wasn't our fault, but we both know it isn't that easy. We can't just take that with peace and pull ourselves together. You weren't theirs. This body wasn't theirs, And the infiltration always started with you because you were the weak spot and I was too young to man the fort against them. But it's okay that you're weak. It's okay that I became weak. It's okay. We're still okay. We are still breathing, I know, because I watch you silently rise and fall still. They didn't get us in the end. And did you know that we used to hold beauty before it all? You know that we still do? I apologize, but now I remember, and I'll start moving forward by cleaning you out again. After all, crust punk is dead. I definitely didn't expect some of it to be the way that it was. I thought I would feel a certain way about putting like a project like this together, making like the cover photos so vulnerable, stuff like that. But there were a lot of like more proud moments. Like I felt a lot of pride with this that I haven't really felt before, and I think that was the most surprising. Like I've always had like issues with other projects that I put out where I reread or like I listen to it and I'm like, man, what was I thinking? But like this one, overall, like I don't really feel that way. I'm actually like really excited for it. Apartments 666 and 668. Bleached out countertops, stains of hair dye never quite washed away, awkward strands of hair lining shower walls. Exit here slowly and take a final look. You will leave things here, solid things, actual pieces of you left behind with the memories, bleached out brain top, stains of rusted safes never cleaned, finally moved, awkward strands of hair lining shower cheeks. Exit here slowly. I'm definitely satisfied with the end result. Like it's like I said, it's definitely like a closing of a chapter, and I've already kind of thought about my projects after this. There's like I want to do a collaboration with a lot of local musicians in my town and put out an album with like all the different sounds from like their different bands or like solo work. And I have a title for it. It would be Homo Sapien. So like I'm excited for that, which is like going to be way different from the tone of this book. I'm thinking about putting out a chapbook that's like called B-Sides, and it's kind of like all the poems that like almost made the cut for like my last poetry book in this one. But no, like a lot of the stuff that I've been writing more recently is not in the same mindset, and definitely heading forward, and there's definitely a lot more like hope in them. And I write a lot about stuff that isn't first person too now. Like I write about, you know, demons and witch shit. That I'm doing okay. I managed to stay afloat. I managed to step back and let you grow. Now all you are is plastic. Some generic version of the person I once loved. And you say I'm a shadow. Remnants of a human you once believed in.